Here we are. Is your mic working?
Hello.
Mine
Seems to be.
working. Your work's mic.
Your work's making.
There we go. Okay. People listening to this won't know the behind the scenes story, but the most difficult setup of a podcast ever.
It's not my fault. That's all I'm going to say.
No, it's not your fault. It's not your fault.
I jinxed it.
But we're here today with Drew Cross.
Hello. Happy to be here. Thanks for the invite.
Thanks for coming on and flying back, especially from Thailand.
Oh, yeah. 100%. Couldn't miss this.
Sounds like a harrowing trip in some parts. But
Yeah.
do you want to give the people a bit of an introduction into who you are and what you're all about?
Yep, I'd love to. So, as you said already, my name's Drew. I am originally from the UK, but I've been here in Australia for 14 years now. Recently got my citizenship, which was a nice weight off the shoulders.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. A little bit about me. At the moment, my focus is on coaching martial arts. I coach MMA and also kickboxing. It's not my full-time job. I have a normal job through the day, if you will. But other than that, just focusing on basically bettering myself. I've been on a bit of a journey over the last few years, which I'm sure we're gonna get into, depending on how deep you want to go. And other things, I'm just interested in investing and trying to basically secure a better future. That's a major focus for me at the moment. So, that's pretty much it in a nutshell.
Okay. And obviously, we're filming this, but some people will be listening in. I've probably seen you around, let's say, the Sydney beaches for a few years. You're quite recognizable.
I'll take that.
It seems that you're also a fighter. Where did this whole image start to develop for you? Because when we all start off as children, did you think this is what I want to be when I grow up, or were you thinking, I want to?
No, not really. As far as a fighter, no. I was much more of a timid kid, I guess. I grew up in quite a rough part of England, in the northwest, which fighting was pretty normal. A little bit of bullying when I was younger, which maybe is sort of what pushed me into it a little bit. As far as the image, like tattoos and stuff like that, honestly, as far as I can remember as a kid, I was always fascinated by it, by tattoos and piercings and just general, people who look different. So I guess that was probably in my DNA somehow. Like that was probably always going to happen. But yeah, like living in the northern beaches, like you say, it can be quite a small community, so you see the same people often, and like you said, I might stick out a little bit considering head tattoos and and things like that. So this wasn't an intention thing. It wasn't designed to stick out, but I guess that is a byproduct of it.
Do people sometimes have a misconception of who you are?
100%. I have, so, not so much now. I feel like generally it's a little bit better now, but I've had a lot of situations where I've been very much judged. Many times someone's come up to me and actually apologized to me and said, I thought you might have been a bit of a dickhead based on how you look, but I've actually come to realize you're a nice guy. Many stories like that. I've actually gone, I was once looking for a place to live in Manly. I turned up at a house, the girl answered the door, looked at me and she was like, oh no, I'm sorry, you're not what I'm looking for. And I didn't even speak to her. So I was like, what do you mean? And she was like, oh, tattoos and, gym and that kind of thing. I was like, oh, well, that's a shame because I'm a really good housemate and I'm a nice guy and I pay my bills and I'm clean. But yeah, you don't want someone with tattoos. So that's fair enough. That says more about you than it does about me, I like to think.
Yeah, I think so. I think like as a tattoo-less person, I'm probably on some other side of the fence, right? And I can't remember retrospectively if I had any preconceived notions before. But the first time probably I saw you on the beaches, I was like, oh, okay. This guy doesn't look like every other person in town. But I think obviously there was Mikey, which has a somewhat similar. So I think most people would have looked at you and thought kindred spirits or brothers.
Yeah, we get mistaken a lot. There's actually a third one of us as well who's fully tatted up with a ginger beard. So we used to go running, three of us, through Manly every morning, and we looked like there was like an ongoing joke that we were the bailiffs running through Manly, bald-headed, tattooed up, ginger bearded ruffians from England, running through this beautiful, expensive town in the northern beaches. It wasn't quite fitting, but yeah.
And what was it like growing up? I guess you was in the north of England.
Yeah, north of England. Well, I actually moved around quite a lot when I was a kid. We were a little bit of a gypsy family. It was just my mum and my brother and myself, raised by a single mum. So there was a little bit of trouble involved with my mum in the past with sort of, my brother's father and things like that, without going into that too much. So we were kind of forced to move around a little bit. So I went to quite a lot of different schools, which wasn't ideal at the time. I think that's where some of the bullying came in. And when I say bullying, it wasn't heavy, but it was more just, kids being kids, taking the piss, because oftentimes I had a different accent from living in different areas. So it was just like the easy little pickings things. I was always quite small as a kid. So, the small guy with a weird accent, it's always gonna happen, in the north of England, at least anyway. So yeah, it was kind of, I'm happy that I grew up where I did, because now that I live here, it's all about perspective, right? I live here and it's amazing. And I see the kids that grow up here that probably don't necessarily appreciate it. They take it for granted. And especially Manly as such is kind of an area where you have to have a bit of money to live here. So a lot of these kids, you see them on their expensive bikes and skateboards, and I don't think it necessarily makes them grow up to be a better person. Not to say that all of them are going to grow up to be dickheads by any means, but I think I'm pretty happy with the perspective I have from growing up the way I did in a single parent household in kind of a rough place. And I think it's led me to where I am today, which despite the bumps in the road, I'm, pretty happy to be where I am. So
Growing up, single parent household, what kind of effect did that have on you as a man, or becoming a man?
I always thought that it didn't have any effect, because I don't know any different. So I'm always going to say that. I guess growing up, there was times where my mum never pushed me into like sports or football, or, like all my mates were into football and things like that. And that was never a thing for me. I was never pushed into it. And I guess that's the only thing I really missed out on. But again, I don't think it affected me too much. There was never any love lacking, like, in the family. I think if there was more neglect or something, then it'd be a much worse situation. But there was always a lot of love, and being the fact that, my mum was on her own, she put a lot of attention into me and my brother, which basically, again, goes to where we are today. I don't think we particularly needed a father, but I can see how it can be a problem for kids now growing up. I can definitely see, now that I'm on the other side of it, that there are, negative consequences to that as well.
And for you, did you ever cause any trouble for your mum? Was you a well-behaved kid?
I was pretty well-behaved, to be honest, yeah. I was just obsessed with books. I was just constantly reading all the time. My little brother, he was the troublemaker. I was the good kid. So that was always, that was the setup at home, yeah.
And, it's often said that people typically won't move miles and miles from their family or from their hometown without good reason. What drove you to eventually move 10,000 miles across the world?
Well, to be honest, it's not a super exciting story or reason. I came here as a backpacker. My plan was to do 6 months. I had a girlfriend in England at the time. I was 19. My life was there. I came here on my own. I met some friends here. We traveled around a little bit. And then I packed up as I was meant to, went home, and then got home and was like, shit, this is not what I want from my life. Came back here, up and down situation of visas and student visas, and had to leave and live in New Zealand for a while, back and forth. It's stress. But, I've had a lot of friends that have come and they've said they really want to stay, and then they end up leaving. And I just think you don't want it bad enough. I think if you really, really want to stay here, you can make it happen. And for me, I knew that this is where I wanted to be. I felt more at home here than I ever had anywhere in England. That may be partly because I'd moved around a lot in England as a kid, like I said before, but when I was here, it just felt right. Like, the prospects I had here were amazing. I went back home after 6 months of here, and, it didn't feel right. Like, I remember one day I went for a run in the park, and like, people running where I'm from, it's not a normal thing. There's not a fitness culture like here. It's like a pub culture. And I remember running through the park and some kids were shouting, shouting shit at me, calling me all sorts of names because I was running, which is ridiculous. But we take those sort of things for granted here, that's so normal to us to get up early and to go and work out. Whereas at home, that's not really a thing. And I have friends at home who are in the same cycles that they were always in, but they're happy doing it. So there's, I don't judge them for it. It's just not for me.
And these kids shouting at you, this before you was tattooed and built like a brick shit house. So
Yeah, probably. Yeah, it was. This was when it would have been sort of 19, 20, just after getting back. Yeah, they might not shout abuse now, but maybe they would, because that's just the culture there. And at one point, I was probably one of those kids shouting abuse, but yeah, it's just normal. It's weird if you don't.
And you mentioned, obviously, some people can really make it happen. They can stay here. Is that like an intentional mantra you've lived by, where like fortitude and persistence will get you where you want to be?
Yeah, 100%. Like, just the fact of, like I said, that mentality towards staying here definitely carries over into other areas of your life. I've come to realize, especially later on in life, that the sort of the things that seem more realistic, like you say, I want to achieve this, nothing's out of reason as long as you're willing to work for it. The more unrealistic it seems just means that you have to work harder for it. And I've come to realize that. And, you know, I'm not a stranger to working hard for things, because I've had to just look at, you know, a lot of people think that, oh, if you're English, you come here, it's easy to stay here. It's really not. It's thousands of dollars. It's countless forms and red tape and bureaucracy. And, you know, I'm not going to say it's not worth it, because it absolutely is. And I'd do it all 100 times over, but it's not easy, like a lot of people seem to think. But yeah, good question. That does carry over into other areas of your life for sure.
And do you think, let's say some of your friends that stayed in their, you know, in their locality, in their town, was the threshold for what they were looking for not as high as you? Like, if you've come from a situation where you're thinking, I need to get away from this, I don't like it, I don't feel at home, do you think some of your friends have thought, this is okay?
I think, yeah, I mean, some of them are, it's a case of they're just home birds, like that's what they know, and they're kind of scared to step out of that, and very much family orientated. And, you know, it's the general thing is to work all year, save up, go to Ibiza, have a massive blowout with the lads, come back, start again, or, you know, next year go to Tenerife, or your typical package holidays.
Can't beat Tenerife, you know, let's be honest.
Don't get me wrong, it's fun, but it's not great when you do it every single year and you go to the same pub in the same place. And, you know, and I'm not saying that everybody does that, but that's just a common theme at home. And like my friends that have stayed there, you know, I've actually had a few friends that have come here and stayed a little while and gone back, and like I said, they're just home birds. It's not for everyone. And I think, especially coming from a rural town, there is very much a small town mentality, and I think it's harder for people to adapt when they come to other cultures, even though the culture is very similar in terms of, you know, you're not going to a Middle Eastern country or something where it's a total culture shock. It's similar in many ways, but also different enough to make them not want to be here.
And when you moved over here, you know, you said you have a normal job as well as kind of additional revenue streams. What's been your career since you've kind of been in Australia?
Yeah, a little bit of everything, to be honest. I did the typical backpackery stuff, working on dodgy building sites, bloody putting my life at risk every day, removing asbestos and, you know, lifting bricks up ladders and working for some dodgy builders. It was great times. At the time, I was getting $100 a day. I was working outside with my top off in the sun, getting a workout. To me, that was life. I was living, but I wanted nothing more than that. As I've got a bit older, I realized, you know, it's not that sustainable. So I basically went back eventually into my old career that I had in England, which was barbering. Did that for many years here in the beaches, which it just takes its toll on you, you know, just that constant dealing with people all day. As I've gotten older and I've been through my own mental health issues and my own family issues, I've gotten less patience with people. And again, working in the barbershop, if nothing else, it was another one of those perspective tools where you get people coming in Northern Beaches from this amazing place who, you know, you stand there and listen to their complaints about, you know, one side burns a little bit longer than the other one, for example, and they're like complaining about pathetic things. And when you've got real shit going on in your head and problems, you just have no patience for that at all. And I started being, I've never been rude to people, but short. I started being short with people, and I wasn't my usual sort of bubbly self. And I could feel that it was time to get out of it. And by this point, I was like late 20s. I was in that whole mindset of it's too late to really dive into something else, and didn't really know what to do with my life. I was in a bit of a tricky financial position at one point, and I just didn't know what to do with myself. At one point I was doing disability care, which I did more so to do something fulfilling, really. Every year, generally, I try and do a volunteering project, and I've done orphanages and things like this all over the world. Again, it's just something that helps my mental health. During COVID, I couldn't do that because I couldn't travel, so I started working for cerebral palsy charity, and a lot of the people that I was dealing with were quite heavily disabled, and I told myself I was going to do it for a year. And I'm one of those people that when I say I'm doing something, I have to do it just for my own peace of mind. But it was a hard, long year. And I've got so much respect for people that do that job full time. But I mean, I was literally wiping asses, and I was doing night shifts. So I'd be going in, dealing with these people like all night, and then not sleeping, and then going straight to work in the barbershop all day, just trying to get on my feet. And it was a really rough year, and yes, fulfilling in many ways. And like a lot of the people I was dealing with, they're totally, normal minded. Their bodies are just disabled. So, a lot of them, they were actually amazing people and some very intelligent people. And so it's again, coming back to the perspective thing, it really puts things into perspective that these people have really been dealt a shit card in life, and makes us think about our problems that we have. And although some of them are very genuine and real problems, it really makes you see that things can be worse at times. And so I did that for a year, moved out of that, got very lucky. My friend basically runs this company that I work for now, which is a surveying company. He offered me the job, they trained me up, and I won't go into too much detail about that because it's a pretty boring story, but I absolutely love my job. I can work remotely with it, lots of admin and stuff. So that's really, really been a big thing for me, finding something that I love after years of doing something that I really just wasn't in love with. And having that there to be able to do something that I enjoy. I started opening other doors in my life now because my mood's better, I'm happier, and I'm able to focus on other things such as investing and coaching and working on my own business and things like that. So I think before, in the slump of working in the barbershop or doing disability care, I wasn't able to do those things because I was just in a pretty dark place, and there was other things going on as well. But yeah, I'm very thankful and fortunate to be in that position.
I think whenever anyone, myself included, walks past a barbershop, we see everyone laughing, joking. I think most people romanticize it. It's the best job. You're hanging out with the lads, talking. It's like a movie. The barbershop, right, with Ice Cube.
Yeah,
that's the perception. But did that cause you to maybe lose some empathy with like the everyday person that walks in?
100%. You see the worst in people. Like a lot of the time, people just treat you like you're just there solely to service them. You're not a human yourself. They turn up, we close at 6 and they turn up at 1 minute to 6 and, start demanding things. And, it's just, they don't care about you a lot of the time. And you come to realize that most people, they're very much, their attitude is they're important. What they need is most important, and everything else comes second. And when you start to see that in people, you just have very little patience. And as I've gotten older, like I say, I've got less patience for people anyway. And the small talk thing, like straight away, it's always the same thing. It's always the same little bits of small talk. And don't get me wrong, you have people that you build a rapport with, and that's awesome. But a lot of the time, it's very much seeing the worst in people, and it's nice to move away from that for sure.
Just thinking back, like I've done loads of jobs in my life, from working in a bar to a restaurant to working in the UK Bunnings, right? Home base of that. I think some of those experiences brought out some kind of philanthropy in me, where I'd overtip a barber, or I'd overtip in a restaurant, or even when I couldn't afford it.
Yeah.
Did it do the same for you, or did it remove that? Do you kind of look at people and think, oh man?
Nah, it didn't do that for me. I know exactly what you're talking about though, because I have had situations like that, such as when I volunteered at an orphanage in Nepal, and I did that. It was only 2 weeks. It was a very hard 2 weeks, but a lot of the kids that were in the orphanage, they'd lost their parents in the earthquakes, and the guy that run the orphanage, absolute hero. He's a beautiful human, but not always the easiest to deal with, and he was very demanding of me. And he, you know, I did a few fundraisers before I got there, raised some money, went over, spent the money directly on things that the kids needed, food, building materials for the orphanage. And I was working directly with, you know, helping to improve this orphanage, which was an amazing experience. But this guy talked to me like absolute shit, like I was his slave, you know, like he was paying me a good wage to be there, which he wasn't. And one day I was, after like 8 days of ripping out bathrooms, I was literally covered in human shit and just stinking. The food was terrible. There was no running water, so very limited amounts of water that I could drink each day. It was just a terrible situation. I had no bed. And then, you know, one day I asked him if I could take the day off and go into the town and book a hotel for the night and clean myself up. And he just looked at me and said, no, you can't go. And I was like thinking, you arsehole, this is like, I am here out of the goodness of my heart. And then I thought about it more and I was getting really angry. And I thought, you know what? That's just my ego. Like, I'm here for 2 weeks. That's it. And I'm getting pissed off because he's telling me what to do. He's here for his whole life. These kids have no prospects in life most of the time. They're absolutely malnourished. They have no education. I come back to this place, this amazing place, and my ego is making me annoyed at this guy because he doesn't want me to have a day off. And that was a massive learning curve for me, because I started to think, you know what, like, you know, when you're sort of in your earlier 20s and you don't think you have an ego, and then you get a little bit older and you start to realize, okay, I can see what's going on here now. That was a big eye opener for me. Like, you've got this amazing person dedicating his life to helping these children, and you've got this like first world problem that I have of not being able to book into a hotel for the night. So yeah, kind of similar to what you were saying in the perspective thing.
Do you think that's enabled you to be a lot more resilient in your life? Because I think probably over the last 3 or 4 years, I've seen more of your journey online, right? And it seems like you've had to go through like some pretty rough moments.
Yeah.
These experiences, how do they kind of act on them?
Definitely resilience is a factor. You know, I know it's kind of cliche, but, you know, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, gets thrown around a lot. But when you actually go through real shit, that becomes very apparent. And I've gone through different periods of my life where some tragic events have happened, and how I've reacted to those events each time has been very different. And it's like trial and error. So, you know, I've learned from past mistakes of how to deal with it. You know, at one point I thought I was being more resilient, but I wasn't. I was just masking it with drugs and you know, frivolousness. And then as I've gone through more shit that's brought back trauma from the original shit, and it's all sort of compounded, then I've started to actually genuinely become resilient, whereas before I've just thought I was. And I think it takes a lot to really sort of get to that point. And multiple tragic events, like, it changes you every time it happens, and each time it happens you have to go on your own little healing journey of whatever it takes to get there. So yeah.
And do you mind if we talk about the particular tragic event that happened a few years ago?
Yeah. So where to start, really? There's quite a lot to go into, but so first of all, originally the first major event that happened was I lost my little brother to a drug overdose. This was a few years ago. So obviously living in Australia and having my family in the UK, one of the big things that we have to sacrifice for the luxury of living here is being away from our family. And, you know, there's a certain amount of guilt involved there, especially when you lose people. So what happened was my brother, he wasn't a drug addict, by the way. He was just a bit of a party guy, liked to experiment. He took too much, and basically my mum found him dead in his bedroom. So I get the phone call from my auntie, hysterical, you know, you need to come home. James has passed away. Your mum's in a bad way. Your mum's trying to take her own life. You know, you need to come back. So within 24 hours, I was on a flight. I was at work when I got the call. Absolute horrendous situation to be on a flight for 24 hours with all of this shit going through your head. Like, you know, what am I going to do from here? What is going to happen when I get home? How am I going to deal with my mum? what's going to happen to my life. Like at this point in time, my life in Australia in my head is done. I can't possibly imagine a world where I come back to Australia anytime soon. So, and actually just to backtrack a little bit, just 2 weeks before my brother passed away, I actually lost a really close friend to suicide as well. And my friend who committed suicide, she was here, and she was one of those people that loves Australia and wants to be here. Her father passed away. She flew to England to be with her family, and she was on a student visa. When she came back to Australia, Australia wouldn't let her in the country because of her attendance at college had dropped. So they put her on a flight home and kicked her out. She's one of my best friends. I travelled South America with her and everything. So because of the Australian immigration system, she had to go home depressed, took her life a few months later, which ended up being a few weeks before my brother passed away. So I was already dealing with that. My brother passed away. I'm back home. My mum's trying to take her life. My mum's trying to run out in traffic. My mum's trying to stab herself. My mum's trying to overdose. I'm dealing with that every day. I've got, like bills to pay in Australia. I've got like a life here. I've got a girlfriend, everything. So, I'm dealing with my mum, worrying about these other sort of things which pale into insignificance in compared to losing someone, but still stresses nonetheless. So, a few months go by. I had to end up going back to work in Australia just to try and, pay the way. I end up going through a breakup whilst I'm in England with my girlfriend at the time of 2 years because, the whole situation of being away, and it just wasn't working. So, dealing with a breakup, which in itself is shit, on top of losing my brother, losing my friend. A few months go by. My mum pretty much starts to heal. She starts to get better slowly. We come up with a plan that we're going to move her out to Australia. It's a long process. It's a parental visa. Costs $60,000. So we're like, right, it gave us something to aim towards. It was the best thing for my mum at the time to really hone in on that. So I come back to Australia to start working again, go back to normal life, which was a really, really hard thing for me to do, to leave my mum in this situation, obviously. She was still in a very bad way. She begged me to come back. She could see how unhappy I was in England. So I come back to Australia. We start the process. We start applying for the visa. I'm working as much as I can to try and save money. My mum eventually goes back to work after about a year. Everything's sort of slowly coming together. I'm slowly healing. But when I got back to Australia, I also fell into the trap of wanting to party again, which there was a lot of guilt attached to that, seeing as my brother lost his life from drugs. And then, I was looking back, I was obviously in a lot of pain and I wanted to mask it some way. So I started partying a lot, taking a lot of drugs, suffering pretty much depression really badly as a byproduct of not just what I'd gone through, but serotonin depletion from all the drugs, clearly. And I was in a pretty bad place. That went on for a little while, and then, another year passes by. We're trying to save money. We're trying to work towards this visa. And I get a phone call off my auntie again saying my mum's in hospital. She's had a heart attack. So I'm like, shit, same situation again. This was Christmas Day. I got the phone call. So after I get the phone call, same thing again. I'm on a flight. 24 hours later, I'm in England. Next to my mum in a hospital bed. The doctor says there's no way she's going to survive. She's brain damaged. We're going to have to turn the machine off. So 2 days later, they turned the machine off. As I was holding my mum's hand, I was there, with her, holding her hand. They turned the machine off. And yeah, my mum was gone. And bearing in mind, I'd only ever grown up with my mum and my brother. I'm not very close with any of my family. The rest of my family, I love them, but I'm not close with them or anything like that. So yeah, again, same situation again. All of the trauma that I'd experienced from losing my brother was instantly brought back from losing my mum. So it was just a horrendous situation. I was in a bad way. And, I had to tie up all my mum's affairs in England pretty much. One of the big things during this was that we'd been waiting on my mum's visa this whole time. And my mum's visa was approved the week before she died. She was ready to come to Australia finally after years of waiting and all the money spent and all the hard work, everything. So I came back to Australia and I fell into a deep, deep depression. I was in a really, really bad way. I become agoraphobic. I was absolutely scared to leave the house. I couldn't leave. On a rare occasion where I went to Coles, as you said earlier, I know quite a lot of people in Manly, partially from working in the barbershop. You know, word spreads in a small community. People stop me and say, I'm really sorry to hear about your mum. That happened a couple of times and it sent me in my shell. So I became so agoraphobic. I didn't leave the house. Luckily, I've got an amazing partner who was with my side the whole time. She was super patient. She was just like an absolute godsend during this whole period. But it took me a long, long time to really start venturing out again. And within all of this madness, there was a lot of other things that had happened as well that like were also really bad and caused a lot of anxiety. For example, one, I got credit card fraud committed against me. And because I was out of the country for so long, when I came back, the bank had sold my debt to a debt collector and I was blacklisted and I had to go through a whole system to deal with this. It was just a mess. And so again, like just massively depressed. Like I'd suffered mental health issues for a while, but not like this. So basically, as I said before, when I got back from dealing with the loss of my brother, I went down one route of partying, and I knew that I couldn't do that this time. I knew if I did that, I wouldn't be here now. I would have took my life. There's no way I could have possibly started taking drugs, because that would have finished me off, because there was many times where I already considered taking my life. It was a very real... There was a phase in my life where I fantasized about it, and if it wasn't for my girlfriend, I would have done it. Like, no question about that. And so basically, when I got back, that happened for a while, and I got a message from my coach, who I'd always, from the beginning of starting my martial arts journey, I'd always had this one coach, always trained with him, we're very close. He was like, look, get back in the gym. I need you to come back to the gym. I was like, no chance at first. It's not happening. A couple of my mates got together. They were like, in solidarity. My mates who don't even train martial arts, they were like, come on, we're all going to go together. Got in the gym, you know, started training. Gradually started feeling a little bit better. Started focusing on, you know, nutrition again, just looking after myself. Over time, just gradually started to just get a little bit stronger. And in reflection of everything that had happened before, of losing my brother and going down that path, I knew very clearly now that the path that I had to go down was totally the opposite direction. I had to focus 100% on self-optimization. Every single thing I can do to better my mind, to better my body, to better my future is what I had to focus on. And I became absolutely obsessed with that. Wasn't overnight. It took a while. And that's got me to where I am now with my mental health. And again, a lot of shit happened in that time in between. But now my whole focus is on any single thing I can do to better myself, whether that's mentally or financially or, you know, spiritually, anything at all. I'm there doing it. And as you said before about some of the posts I've wrote on social media, the idea of the post, because obviously social media can be very shit for many reasons, but one thing that's good about it is you can use it to be a positive light in other people's lives. And, you know, everything that I write are things that I think I wish I'd seen. I wish someone had wrote that for me to read when I was in a bad place. And I know most people don't even read it. They skim past it, and most people might think cheesy or whatever. And I've been one of those people as well. You know, you get a lot of wankiness on social media, people writing copied and pasted quotes and things like that. Everything I write is from the heart, and I always express vulnerability in it, because I have been that guy who's insecure. I have been that guy who's wanted to kill myself. I have been that guy who feels pathetic and hates himself and self-loathing, you name it. You know, it's not very often up until recently you see guys say things like that, especially like people who are in a position such as myself as being like a coach. You know, if someone traditionally a martial arts coach is someone who's quite tough and strong. And I want to show people that, you know, you can't judge people based on how they look. If somebody looks healthy and strong physically, it doesn't mean that they're not really crying out inside. And as a product of me posting the certain things I've posted, I have had a lot of people reach out to me and say, you know, that I really needed to hear that at that moment in time. And that in turn then helps me so much in my journey. And then I see those people also posting things that I'm sure are helping other people. I want to live in a world like that, where everybody wants to be a positive light in other people's lives. I'm not going to say I want to be an inspiration, because again, that sounds wanky. I just want to be a positive light. I want to be that guy that gets people to go to the gym, or gets people to party less, or gets people to read a book that helps them in some way, insert whatever. But I want to be that positive light. And this past year has been a focus on that through coaching and through social media and through other things. And that's where I'm at today. And I'm very fortunate to be here after the turbulent times.
Yeah, I think turbulent is quite the understatement. And I think you touched on it before, mental health. But I think like your story, your journey in particular, anyone could look at that, and for any struggle, mental or physical, there's a clear reason behind it. How did you feel before all these things happened? Because people often say that, let's say, drug taking or drinking is a sign of avoidance, avoiding those feelings.
Yeah.
Do you feel like these events kind of perpetuated any mental struggles, or were they bubbling away in the background?
They were definitely bubbling away. So the way I look at it is like my up until 20-ish, I was like, up until 20 and early 20s, I was pretty cocky, I wouldn't say arrogant, but I could see why I would come across as arrogant. I was very careless, very frivolous. I was the party guy. I was the center of attention. I was the one telling the jokes.
Many high risk behaviors, or
in terms of the amount of drugs I took, probably, yeah, for sure. But nothing high risk really, as in, there are some times where I think about certain nights and I wonder how I'm still alive after that. But yeah, nothing that springs to mind in particular. But I guess, like I say, the early 20s was pretty cocky. And then I guess from early 20s to mid 20s, that's when the darkness started to really come in. And I always put it down to just years of drug abuse finally catching up with me. And, just a few other things that had happened in my life. But I think I went from being this sort of like cocky, confident kid to being this very insecure, dark, self-loathing person. And I'd never experienced those feelings before. They were very new to me at that time. And I didn't actually know what anxiety was. I didn't know what self-loathing was. I didn't know what intrusive thoughts were. These were just like things to me that were happening that I couldn't put my finger on what they were. And so, yeah, I went on this very dark, went into a dark place, and the events that happened obviously pushed me further into that dark place. And as it went on into my later 20s, it kind of got worse and worse and worse into my early 30s, when probably around the time I lost my mum, which was 2 years ago now, which was, early 30s. That was the peak of the darkness. Like I say, that's when I really wanted to end it all. And I just turned 35, so I'm bang on in my mid 30s now. And only this past year, after, I don't know if it's a result of the journey I've been on, but I've finally started to find that balance between self-love and your own ego. It's the self-love without the arrogance and without the cockiness. Somewhere there's a delicate balance in the middle where you love yourself enough that you don't love yourself too much. And I think when you get to that place, that's when you really start to grow. That's when you really start to excel in a way. And that's when I've started to really move into these other areas of my life, which haven't been there before, that have been very positive for me. So,
and for anyone that's kind of finding themselves in a very dark place now, over recent months or even years, obviously you've been there and you've brought yourself back from like the depths. What advice would you give to them on how to kind of start rebuilding themselves? Because
yeah,
I think a few of us have been there when there's this hopelessness that you just don't know which way's up. So like, how did you go about finding your way back to the surface?
I think the hopelessness emotion is the worst, because when you're in that hopelessness, it feels like it's never going to end. You feel like that's it and that's how it's always going to be. And I've literally woke myself up crying, thinking that exact thought. But you have to remember, you have to be patient. Remember that it's not always going to be like that. Like if someone like me who's having those thoughts of death and things can pull out of it, then you can too. I think most importantly, and it's the cliche things that everyone says that we overlook, is talk to people. That's the main one. Always talk to people. You always, like, everybody feels like a burden when they talk, but most people actually like it when you talk to them because it makes them feel important. That's what people forget all the time. Talking is the main thing. Talk to people, especially people that you really care about. also surround yourself with people that care about you. Surround yourself with people that are positive. Surround yourself with people that are doing good things that inspire you. Don't surround yourself with the people that want you to take drugs, that are trying to get you to go to the party every weekend. Get rid of those people. They might be good people, but you don't need that influence in your life. And again, it's the textbook stuff, but exercise and nutrition, these things, like, once you start finding out all these little things that can help you and you start using them together, you know, everything right down to saunas and ice baths, looking after your nutrition, like reading, like learning and being creative, they're massive outlets as well. And I think for me, I'm very lucky because I found my main outlet is martial arts. That's my passion in life. And I think a lot of people, they just don't find what their outlet is. I think everybody's got something that's going to do it for them. Some people just haven't found it yet. You need to find what your passion is and go for it. It doesn't matter what it is. It could be ping pong. It could be knitting. It doesn't matter. Just find that thing and focus on it. And that is in itself a massive outlet.
I think one of the biggest challenges for people is when they start to go through this journey and they start to treat things outside in. Right? I'm going to build myself up physically, or I'm going to work out, exercise, eat more. It can be this period of real boredom because when you're out, when you're partying, when you're living this hedonistic lifestyle, you're going to experience the tens, right? You're going to have these amazing times, amazing nights, wild experiences, and that can drop off. Like when you're waking up early, having, you know, apple cider vinegar, followed by a walk in the sunshine and then a run. Yeah, it's nice. It could be a 6, 7, 8. But it's rarely a 10 out of 10. And it really takes time to compound on your life and have that positive effect. I think a lot of people, let's say they fall off the wagon when the intrusive thoughts come in the evening, and you can't always be around positive people that are a good influence. How do you maintain the willpower to kind of keep clean? I don't mean in terms of drugs, but I mean keep clean in terms of living this good well-being lifestyle when other things are going to pull you left and right?
Yeah, it's a good question. As I've got older, I found it easier because I'm so scared of the hangover and the come down. So for me personally, that's enough motivation to not make me want to do it. But I know that's not the case for everyone. In which case, it's easy to have a good night out. It's easy to go out with your mates and have fun. It's like anybody can do that. I could go out now and round up some people and have a wild night. That's a 10 out of 10. I'll feel shit for it the next day, but you know, I can do it. But the point is, where does that get you? Like, what you achieve from that? Yes, it's good in that moment, but you should be focusing on beyond that moment. You should be focusing on your future. Every time you go out on the weekend and spend $200 on having a good time, that $200 could have been spent investing in something, or that time could have been spent learning. And, you know, the next day, not only are you feeling shit the next day, but you probably don't realize it, but for the few days later, your motivation's gone. You're probably not going to go to the gym, or if you do go to the gym, you're not going to put everything into it. You're probably, you know, you're setting yourself back on healing if you've been to the gym the week before. Like, all these little things for me is enough motivation, because I know that if I go and have that 10 out of 10 night out, it's not just the next day. It's way beyond that I suffer. And I think, again, like what we spoke about earlier, when you want something bad enough, if you want to have a better life, if you just want to work 9 to 5 every week, go out at the weekend, have a holiday a couple of times a year, and you can get away with that going out on the weekend, sweet, go out at the weekend, that's fine. But if you want more than that, then you know the changes you need to make, and you're not going to get to that place you want to be unless you make those sacrifices. And that's what it comes down to. It comes down to sacrifice, and it comes down to where you want to be in life.
What about younger people that listen to this and say, like, Drew, I don't need to...
You boring bastard.
Yeah, I don't need to invest in my life yet. I can wait till I'm 32, 33. And if I don't go through unfortunate events, like, I can get away with this scot-free.
And who am I to judge? That's what I did. But every single day, I think if I'd started the journey I'm on now sooner, where would I be in life now?
Do you wish you had? Do you wish you started?
Absolutely. Don't get me wrong. I've got some stories from nights out which are great. And there's certain times where I wouldn't give up for anything. But if I'd have just reined it in a little bit, if I'd just surrounded myself with people that weren't obsessed with partying, and not to blame other people by any means, but, you know, I think a lot of the time we are a product of who we're around. If I'd have just started a little bit earlier, I think I would be a lot more advanced where I am in my life than I am now, And I think the goal, right, obviously, is to be at a point where you don't have to work all the time. I don't want to get to 65 when I retire and be too old to travel and do the things that I love. I want to get to that sooner. The sooner you start, the sooner you get to that. So it's all about how much you want it. That's all it comes down to. As simple as that.
A lot of your life now is attached to healthy living, martial arts. Is there any fragility in that? Would an injury send you back in the other direction?
Yeah, something I talk about a lot. Obviously, martial arts is a high risk. And there's never a time where I'm not injured, to be honest. You find ways to work around it. But if there was something serious, it really opens my eyes up when I think about this, about how fragile like mental health can actually be. Because even recently, I've been suffering with a bad back, and it's really slowed my training down, and I've noticed that affecting my mental health and creeping in. And it's a constant worry. You just, what do? Do you stop altogether in the fear of that? In which case, I'll be more depressed. Or do I keep going, try and manage it? And it's all about how you manage it. Picking the right training partners, and anything can happen in the gym. I've seen people break their ankle walking into the gym. They've tripped over the step on the way into a class before the class has even started. Anything can happen. But you have to be aware of that. And it's the nature of the sport, unfortunately, with martial arts. So it's just manage it and working around it and just hoping for the best that you get through.
And do you think you have the crutches you need in case anything ever goes wrong to stop yourself? Obviously, it sounds like you've got good people around you. It sounds like you have good influences. It sounds like you have discipline. But do you have the stop gaps in place, the safety belt, in case anything ever sends you in the wrong direction?
I like to think so. I have a lot of things to focus on. There's never a moment where I'm sat doing nothing. If I'm not at work, I'm researching. If I'm not researching, I'm working on building my own business. There's always these things. Or, worst case scenario, out of all that, I'm sat reading a book, learning, or I'm being creative, I'm drawing, or I'm making art. These are all, like I said before, these are all outlets in their own right. And yes, the main thing for me is exercise and training. But if I can't do that, you have to find another way. And I think this is, again, the difference to now for earlier on. Before, let's say, hypothetically, I'm in my early 20s and I get injured. I'm not sitting reading a book looking for ways to expand myself, being creative, I'm sat watching Netflix, eating takeaway, drinking beers, smoking weed. That's what I would be doing. So now I know that that's not what I would do, because I just know that I'm not at that point in my life now. So again, it comes down to having those outlets and having those things that are good. For example, researching like crypto or investing or whatever it is that you're researching in, this shit's quite complicated. You have to really sit down and read it. Every time you're spending an hour or 2 hours on your laptop researching, looking up fundamentals or looking up macroeconomics or whatever it is that you're looking at, that's time that your brain's not overthinking other shit that's not necessary. Like anxiety is basically just dramatization in your own head of random shit. Once you take away that by focusing on something else, something that's productive, something that could genuinely lead you towards a better future, that, it eradicates a lot of that darkness. So they're the stop gaps, and they're the lessons I've learned through, a product of trial and error.
And the last thing I want to touch on is your, I don't know what to call it, a compound, a place to escape.
My property, yeah.
Tell us about that, because I've seen you kind of off traveling this seems to be the distant ends of Australia.
Yeah.
Well, how did this all start?
To be honest, it started during COVID. There was a lot of distrust towards the government in COVID.
I was so jealous when I saw this.
Yeah.
Like
a lot of people say that.
We were in a good place, and I was loving life, and we could surf every day.
Yeah.
Then I see you pop up on Facebook in this like seeming billionaires lounge.
Like people say all the time, "Oh, I'm so jealous that you've got that." Or they say, "Oh, it looks amazing." And they obviously attached to that business, we have an Instagram page, which is what you're referring to. Which everything on the Instagram page is beautiful. Like obviously, you're only going to post the good shit.
Oh, this is just Instagram, right?
You want to see the backside of it. We literally have done back-breaking, laborious shit up at that house. When we bought it, there was no plaster on the walls. There was no, everything was broken. It was dirty. It was rat infested. It was horrendous. That's pretty much how we got it so cheap. And We've developed it. We've worked on the land. We've basically transformed it. We rent it out on the weekends to groups. We do like yoga retreats, ayahuasca retreats, like weddings, anything, you name it, we do it. And the idea when we bought it is like, it's quite funny how it came about, really, because we were actually trying to book an Airbnb at one point a few years ago, just before COVID. We were trying to book an Airbnb for a friend's birthday, and there was like 20 of us. And I don't know if you've ever tried to book an Airbnb for like a group of people, young people. It's almost impossible. Like, nobody wants to. Everyone's just straight away, they're going to have a party. No. So we were like, you know what? There's a gap in the market here. Like, if we buy a place and basically cater for big groups, and we, make it so that anything gets broke, it's not that important, then we can really clean up here. We've got no neighbours. Nearest neighbour's a couple of kilometres away. So we've basically got this space where people can make noise, people can have fun. Gap in the market, that's our niche, perfect. So we bought it. We spent countless hours on it. We got it so nice. We were like, you know what? We don't really want big groups anymore. We can kind of see where people are coming from with that. So yeah, like I said, yoga retreats, things like that, weddings, romantic getaways and family vacations. But the idea is it's totally off grid. And going back to what I said before with the whole COVID thing, during COVID, there was a lot of distrust in government, without going into that, obviously. But it seemed like a really good idea to have somewhere that we weren't reliant on other people. So we bought this place. There's no mains electricity. It's totally solar powered. Rainwater tanks, backup generators. The plan obviously is to grow food eventually. We're just slowly starting the process with that. And we'll be living there full time from next year. Luckily, I can work remotely. We have the whole Starlink, thanks to Elon Musk. So the idea, like I say, was just to have to not be reliant on anyone. And we've built a gym there. We've pretty much got everything we need. And, that's a really nice feeling to know that if shit really hits the fan, if there was a zombie apocalypse tomorrow, we'll be all right.
Sufficient tinned food.
Yeah, we've got tins of Spam buried in the garden, ready, it's good to go.
Okay. And I think it's... I lost my train of thought thinking about the zombie apocalypse now.
Yeah, I genuinely fantasize about it now. Now that I'm set up, I'm like, I kind of want a zombie apocalypse. Is that weird?
It's kind of weird. Thanks for that, because I've got nothing set aside for that.
Oh, well, you can come and join the cult.
At least you'll have some listening material with the podcast.
Yeah, there we go.
Are you pleased you've kind of made it into this holistic, occasion, this holistic place, rather than a place for groups of 20 to go and kind of get smashed?
Yeah, I do. We do have little parties there. We host people for parties every now and then, and we've been pretty lucky so far. I think if something was to really go wrong, like someone smashed the place up, we might change our policy a little bit. But so far, so good. Most people are respectful. It's the ones that you don't expect, actually, that, you rent it out to a nice little Sydney-based family and you turn up and the place is a mess.
Orgy.
Yeah,
Oh, was it orgy?
Yeah, it could be. Who knows? I mean, that was one of the things we advertised. If you want to have an orgy, we're okay with that. With no secret cameras. So
nice. Just a couple. Actually reminds me, when I was living in Kensington in London, I rented my my place out, Airbnb, completely against the tenancy agreement. I was renting myself. It was a good price. It was New Year's Eve, and I rented it out for 2 days to mother and daughter. It was right opposite Kensington Palace. I get a call from a friend that lives next door. He's like, I think you might want to come home. We've got armoured police outside, just shut the road down. There's helicopters out, like one helicopter outside circling so close to William and Kate, I think, at the time. There was 400 people.
Oh, wow.
In my apartment.
Yeah, you hear horror stories like that. I'm kind of anticipating that at some point, but
my landlord never found out either.
That's pretty lucky.
I don't remember who he was. It's 10 years ago. So,
yeah.
So okay.
Yeah, that's lucky.
And if people want to keep up with you, what you're doing, where you're staying, where should they find out more about you, Drew?
Probably my Instagram is the best bet. It's Doglad, Doglad_ actually, which was my DJing name, which was something that I was into for a little while. There's a backstory to that as well.
Already got Doglad, or did they?
Yeah.
You had to put the underscore.
Exactly. Doglad was a really shit band that I was in school. So it seemed quite fitting when I started trying to push my DJing career that I bring back the name for nostalgia's sake. So yeah, it's Doglad_. If you want to check out the property that we've been talking about, it's great_escape_retreat. That's
/ sex party.
/ orgy discount dog lad.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Drew.
Thanks for having me. It's been great. Cheers.
It's outro music.